the next few lessons we're going to do is going to be a bit of review and a bit of filling out some of the stuff that maybe we've had in beginning classes. You're all at different levels, so we'll do that just to kind of get everyone at least grounded. And don't freak out, I'll be presenting more and more information in these classes, okay? Once we get through some of the introductory stuff, I'll try to get more regular lessons where we'll have a little bit of reading, we'll have a little bit of conversation, vocabulary, grammar, a mix of everything, okay? So we just did some basic readings last week, so nothing too hard, I hope. Today might be a little bit more involved. We're going to look at the word ta, which you ought to have been familiar with a little bit by now, but we're going to look at it in a little bit more depth maybe than you've seen. And important thing here is I don't really necessarily expect you to memorize every word and every form that's on these, but I'd like you to be familiar with it and keep these in your folder with you, so bring them to class so that when we are later coming up with something we can refer back to some of these lessons. I try to do grammar summaries on some of these. Okay? So we look at the word ta, and ta basically means is. Okay? But in Irish there are 3 different words that mean is in English, okay? Those of you who know Spanish know there's a couple. You have estar and ser, and ta is kind of like estar, okay? And ta is used when you're describing where something is, what it's like. So it's used for description of something, okay, as opposed to saying what something is. Okay, and we'll get to that in more detail later. All right, so look at some examples here. So in sentence 1 is using ta to describe what someone is like. Okay? So ta Sean ard ach ta Myra ishel. So ta Sean ard ach ta Myra ishel. So John is tall but Mary is short. Okay? And so use ta is the name of the person who you're talking about, Sean, and an adjective describing what they're like. Ard is tall or ishel is short. Okay? All right? So we have a few other adjectives here. So for one, so tall is ard. Short, ishel. Long is fada. And short for length is gyar. Fat is rower. And thin is tawny. Okay? So we can use any of these to describe person or dog or thing. Okay? So you might say, you might say ta an nahar sho fada, so this snake is long, ach ta nahar shin gyar, but that snake is short. Okay? So ta is used with an adjective to describe what something is like. All right? Ta is used to describe how you feel. So ta me teen is I am ill. Ta me teen. Okay? Or we can describe Sean that way. Ta Sean teen. Okay? Okay? Ta is used to describe where something is. Okay? So the cup is in the kitchen. Ta an kupan sa christian. Okay, and some other words we can use to describe where things are. Here is ansho. There is anshin. Inside is ishche. Outside amu. In the garden sagarjin. And at home sawalya. Okay. And probably have seen most of these before if you're in beginning classes. Okay. Ta is also used with she to describe the weather. So it is cold ta shefur. Okay, in other words you can use are hot che, wet fluch, dry tirim, dark dorcha, and bright gal. Okay. So we're going to come back to some of these in a bit as we go down. Now, in Irish, all verbs, you have to pretty much learn four forms of them. You have to learn the form that you use to make a statement, to say what something is like or what is happening. You have to learn the question to make the form to make a negative statement, to say this isn't happening or this isn't this way. You have to learn a question form, so you want to ask someone, is this happening? And you have to learn a negative question, isn't this happening? Okay, and there's, ta is an irregular verb, so it's one of 11 irregular verbs in Irish, so it's going to have very bizarre things happening throughout it, and which is why we covered this verb by itself. Okay, it's one of the main verbs you can be using in Irish, so knowing this is really important to being able to say anything. But it changes all over, so you have to really get used to all the forms. Okay. Now, in Irish, there are several different what are called tenses. Okay, and we're going to look first at the present tense, and that's to describe. This is actually with ta. It's kind of a special use, the form ta, and it's talking about how something is right now. Okay. So to say it is cold, sentence 5, tá sé fuair. Okay, that means right now it is cold. The negative form, níl. So níl sé fuair. It is not cold. The question form is an will. So is it cold? An will sé fuair. And like I said, there's 4 forms. There's a negative question, nach will. So nach will sé fuair. Isn't it cold? Okay. So any form, any verb you learn in Irish, you're going to have to learn 4 things in each of the tenses and modes and all that. So you're going to have to learn how to make the statement like tá sé fuair. You have to learn how to make the negative statement, níl sé fuair, isn't cold. You have to learn how to ask a question, an will sé fuair, is it cold? And you have to be able to ask a negative question, nach will sé fuair, isn't it cold? Okay? And some of this should be familiar. Okay? Now, when you answer a question with an will or nach will, or when you answer any yes-no question in Irish, you answer back with the same words you would use to make the positive statement or to make a negative statement. Okay, so there is no real word for yes and no per se in Irish. You have to answer back part of the question. Okay, so if someone asks, is it cold, the way you say it is cold, you say yes, is you say is. And if you want to say no, you say isn't. So you use tá or níl. Okay? Now, tá and níl are not the answer to every question. They're only answers to questions if you start with an will or nach will. Okay? And that's important to remember. Okay? So you have to kind of pay attention to what you're being asked. All right? So, and there are other ways to ask the question, is it cold? And then you have to answer differently. Okay? So you have to be careful. You can't just say tá or níl. All right? So, we'll do a little bit with this now, okay? Kind of using our patterns we had above. So, so sentence 1 said, tá sean ard, ach tá maira ishel. So I might ask a question, an will sean ard, is John tall? How do you answer that based on that sentence? Tá, okay? So tá sean ard, an will sean ard, tá. An will Myra ard. Okay. Now, how would you ask, is Sean fat? And will Sean rower? Okay. All right, and I could answer tá, meaning yes, and I could say tá Sean rower, or I can say níl, tá Sean tawny. So no, John is thin. Okay. Or I can say tá sé ard agus rower. So yes, he is tall and fat. Okay. So important thing when you answer a question, you answer generally you answer the question with either tá or níl if it's an unwill question, and then you go on to say more if you want to. Okay. If you just want to say yes or no, you just have to do the short thing, tá or níl. Okay, you don't have to say tá sé or níl sé, you just say tá or níl. You will hear people a lot of times saying tá sé as an answer to an will sean ard. But technically it's not correct, but I guess if people keep doing it, I guess someday it'll be correct. But really grammatically all you really have to say is just tá. Okay? And okay, let's try a couple more here. So an will sé fuair. Níl sé fuair. Right. Tá muid de San Diego agus níl sé fuair. So we're in San Diego. It's not cold here. Okay. Tá sé che. Right. Okay. Níl. Tá sé go maith. Okay. So it is nice. Okay?
She's living in the right spot for her anyway.
Right. Okay? Now I might ask, Unwil and Kupan sa Christian, based on sentence 3. Tan Kupan sa Christian? Ta, okay? How about Unwil Barbara sa Christian? Neil. How will Barbara? Where's Barbara? Tashi and Shuk. Okay? Alright? So, that's Ta. Now, the next one you may be a little less familiar with. Okay, and that's form Bien. Good to meet you. So, Bien is really the normal present tense of Ta. That's what's used to describe when